And feel free to participate with your screens on or off. If you want to relax and listen along and take notes, or if you're having lunch or something like that, it's perfectly fine. There's no forced engagement happening here. Just engage how you feel comfortable. Okay, so our essential question for today is, what mindsets and work habits can enhance your academic success and well-being? Right, so as we'll see as we talk a little bit more about imposter syndrome, it really is a mindset thing, but it's a bigger deal than we typically give it credit for in higher education. It can really cause a lot of suffering for people and sort of hijack your academic experience. So, but changing your mindset can make a big difference, and especially your work habits. Just going into it, I would like to point out this quote here. So let me know if you recognize it or not. The exaggerated esteem in which my life work is held makes me feel ill at ease. I feel compelled to think of myself as an involuntary swindler. Any idea who said this? Hi, Maggie. On your phone today? Great. All right, I won't hold the suspense for too long. That it is Albert Einstein, right? So you can see from some of these quotes that Albert Einstein had, he probably was dealing with imposter syndrome, right? But he's widely acknowledged to be one of the greatest physicists of all time. We see some other trends emerging amongst famous public figures. They've said similar things. Michelle Obama struggles with imposter syndrome. Dr. Margaret Cho. And we see the same thing with some A-list actors, right? When I receive recognition for my acting, I feel incredibly uncomfortable. I tend to turn it on myself. I feel like an imposter. Meryl Streep. Why would anybody want to see me in a movie? I don't know how to act anyway. Why am I doing this? Tina Fey, I kind of like this one. The beauty of imposter syndrome is you vacillate between complete feelings of I'm a fraud, oh my God, they're on to me. And we see some people saying like they're afraid that one day someone's going to show up and like take their Oscar away and say it's like a mistake, right? So I don't want to bore you reading these verbatim. You'll have the slides afterwards, but it's more or less just to point out that, oh yeah, and I like this one from Seth Godin too. Yes, you're an imposter, and so am I, and so is everyone else. Superman lives on Krypton, and the rest of us are just doing our best, right? So author Seth Godin. So as you will see that one of the things that these individuals have in common is that they're all in very competitive fields, right? And so perceived fraudulence tends to be common. It's commonly observed in environments where competition is very high. So like the entertainment industry, the political arena, and academia, right? Those are the places we typically tend to see it because that's where competition is very high. And there's also a long legacy of industry standards that sort of dictate like who belongs and who doesn't. There's that sort of culture attached to it as well. Happy International Women's Day, Debbie says. Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, so happy International Women's Day. As we see, there are lots of women here. So if you have that experience, please feel free to jump in and share it. Okay. And so even though we showed those examples, I just want to point out that it's not limited to people that are highly successful, right? So it's not like you have to have imposter syndrome to be successful, but it's also to show that if you do struggle with it, it doesn't mean that you're less capable than anybody else. You're perfectly capable of achieving high levels of success, and it's not a prerequisite to success either, right? The bottom line is that anybody can feel themselves as an imposter, but it's simply something that some people struggle with, and it causes them some suffering. And if dealt with, then you can enjoy more life satisfaction and enjoy your success more. That's really the main message with that. It's estimated that about 70% of people experience one episode of imposter phenomenon in their life, right? So it's typically common to, if you're new, say, to the office or the organization, to have some feelings of imposterism at times, right? But what we're talking about with imposter syndrome is just this consistent, prevalent thing that sort of hijacks your life and your work process. So what is imposter syndrome and what is it not, right? All right, so imposterism is basically you have this false perception that you somehow made it, right? And in the arena of academia and graduate school, it's like somehow you snuck in, right? You got in, you're here. Now you sort of have to prove your worth, that you belong here and that you matter here. Despite the views of the objectives of observers, right? So for example, I have a friend, he's a famous actor, he's like in some big screen movies. And when you talk to him about it, you'll hear him say things like, I just got that part because I had the agent and that agent referred me to this person, right? So there might be some imposterism happening there because it's completely negating all the work that happened before that, right? The 20 years of acting classes, the 20 years worth of auditions leading up to landing that agent, to landing that part, right? So attributing it to luck rather than your own achievement. So objective observers will likely be able to tell that you have earned it through merit, but you internalize it as you just got lucky or you snuck in. So real imposters are people that really are not doing that work, right? They're just like basically faking it, right? So that's the difference between a false imposter and a real imposter. A false imposter has all the evidence of success, but sees themselves as an imposter, versus a real imposter doesn't have the evidence of success to back it up. It's also not a display of modesty. Okay. Yeah, so there says, some days I don't believe that this is real. You're everything.
This is a song by Abe Parker
Oh,
in
okay.
2022, so it's very new, and it says exactly what you want to say. So he actually said it as a form of song. Like, he said everything. He said he doesn't believe that this is real. You're everything that I want, but it doesn't feel real. Why does it feel real? Why is it real? And sometimes I feel like I faked my resume, and I bought it, and you bought it. Like, it says the same thing, and we do feel that somehow. I do feel that. I feel that sometimes. And I hope I'm not faking it or being dramatic about it. Neither that I hope that I do have it. It's just that you're torn sometimes. You don't know if you have the real or the fake imposter syndrome.
Yeah, you're not sure, but I think that when you start giving yourself credit for the things you do achieve. And it's okay to be humble, but it's a difference between being humble and I think you could one of the ways it really shows is in how much you worry and catastrophize things and how it affects your work habits. We'll see in a minute with the imposter cycle. Other things to note about it is that it's not a diagnosed like personality disorder. It's not in the DSM-5, right? So it's not like a clinically treated sort of problem, right? Which is part of the reason why it doesn't really get a lot of attention. A lot of psychologists don't really seem to give it that much attention, and a lot of on-campus health promotion programs tend to overlook it. But it's something that really there has to be conversation about in order to deal with it, because if you struggle with imposter syndrome, you're certainly not going to go seek help out yourself, because you don't want to be exposed for not belonging. Okay. All right, great. So this is the diagram I really want to get to, because I think this is where it hits home a little bit more for graduate students. So this is the imposter cycle proposed by Clance. So this really has to do with performance-related tasks or achievement-related tasks. So what happens is you're presented with this achievement-related task, say that it's an exam, it's a paper, a presentation of some kind, any sort of instance where you feel like you're in a position to be judged or evaluated by others, especially if it seems very high stakes to you, right? So the achievement-related task presents itself, and then that ushers in anxiety, self-doubt, and worry. You know, am I enough to really do this? What happens if I don't achieve well? Will I, not belong? Will they ask me to leave? And so this worry results in one of these two work styles: over preparation or procrastination, which are equally as damaging. Because the problem is when you over prepare, you spend so much time on one task to rule out the chances of failure that you really steal your time and energy away from other tasks you need to work on. So it's robbing Peter to pay Paul sort of scenario, right? So you over prepare, you make sure that you're so well prepared for what's coming up that there's no chance of failure, or you procrastinate, right? So you worry so much about it, or let's say you wait till the last minute to do it, or you spend way too much time doing the research part of it and don't get to the writing part of it. And let's say that, you pull it off, right? You procrastinate and you cram it all at the last minute, and you still do a really good job. Or you over prepare and do a really good job. You get praised for the good work that you do, and then you feel relief, a sense of accomplishment after the hurdle of the work is done, after you get through the performance-related task. And then your evaluators give you positive feedback for it, right? But you discount the positive feedback you receive. So it doesn't really matter how good of a job you do. If you over prepared for the task, then you discount the positive feedback, saying that, well, you have no idea the amount of effort I had to put into it to get that. So it doesn't really count, right? Or you cram so much at the last minute that you're like, hey, I just got lucky, so this positive feedback doesn't count. All right, Debbie says, I've had some sleepless nights lately thinking that maybe I'm not cut out for the PhD research. especially when others in the field say we expect you have to X, Y, and Z skills as a PhD independent researcher. But then nobody really talks about what the expectations are. Completing coursework successfully, because most folks do that. But in my 2 cents, personal experience lately in the PhD program, yeah, I think everybody feels the same way you do, Debbie, in a PhD program. And this is one of the issues, is that we have a front stage and a backstage. And on the front stage, we all show up as our polished selves, and we come to campus wearing our academic masks of perfection. And so nobody is saying, hey, I'm having some sleepless nights wondering if I'm cut out for the PhD or not, right? But if you were to actually share this more openly, you would hear more people actually find out that everybody feels the same way you do. None of us feel like we're really cut out for it, you know? And that's part of the invisible curriculum. So there's all kinds of departmental expectations, cultural expectations, the phases of acculturation into academia that the PhD process brings you through, right? From entry, admission, to the coursework process, to the coursework process, quals, gradually moving you towards more independent research. It's an acculturation process, right? But there's so many unspoken, invisible things that are not transparent to you happening there, that of course you're going to worry if you're meeting the expectations or not, because honestly, the expectations aren't well communicated. And one of the empowering things about this webinar is nobody can do anything about it except for you, right? Your mentors aren't going to do it. Your faculty's not going to do it. You're probably not going to go to the psychological counseling center and talk about it. You can now, maybe you're aware of it. But the fact is that most people don't know what you're struggling with. You probably don't know what you're struggling with. And if you're already worried that you're not cut out for it, the last thing you want to do is go talk to people that you perceive to have power over you about it, and risk them thinking like, oh, maybe they're not, right? Which isn't a reality. That's your imposter syndrome thinking. But hopefully we can shift that mindset a little bit and get you to advocate for your needs a little bit more, right? Because what you really need to do is advocate for yourself and show up and say, hey, I don't know what my expectations are. Can we have it crystal clear, please? And in this specific way, right? Because squeaky wheel gets the grease. If you don't ask for it, you don't get it, right? And if you need it in writing, ask for it in writing, whatever it is. Yep. So then you discount it, your positive feedback, and then it increases your level of perceived fraudulence. Now, what I want to point out is the compounding nature of this, because you go through this worry, this cramming or over preparation. If you're over preparing, you're stealing from other tasks you need to do, and then you have to switch to those. Then a new achievement task is going to arise. And what happens is you're putting yourself in this unnecessary state of chronically stressing yourself out, your perceived stress. And it's not sustainable. The fact of the matter is that you got to get ahead of this right now, because the more you go in your professional path, the more responsibilities you're going to have. So you need to prevent burnout so you can graduate. You know, like there's a very high rate of PhDs that don't graduate. So you want to avoid burnout so you can cross the finish line. And in addition, you have to remember that the higher you go on that pay scale, the more responsibilities you're going to have. And you want to enjoy your success. If you're always stressing out with these accumulating achievement-related tasks. You're going to chronically be stressed out all the time. It's not going to be good for your health. It's not positive success that you can enjoy. And for the sake of your loved ones, like no one wants to be around a ball of stress. So we got to change the thinking and the work habit behind it. Yeah, Sarah, you look like you want to say something.
I love the sentence, enjoy your success. There's a term I like to follow. I would love if I would follow in my life, which is slow living, like slow. Keep it slow, because I'm quite the fast person. Like I'm hot-headed, I'm fast, I'm active, I'm easily happy, easily angry, yada yada yada. But being slow and steady, enjoying your success, keeping other people's opinion of you out of your business, like what other people think of you and your success and your performance is none of your business. But it's very hard when you're in the boat, you're on the boat in the water, to be very wise about it, Jonathan. I mean, when you say it, it makes a lot of sense. But when you're in the water, like you are there, it's quite a struggle. Don't you think so?
It's a constant struggle. I love the quote you said, what other people think about you is none of your business. That's true. And the honest truth is that other people don't think about us nearly as much as we think they do. We think about us a lot, and we think other people are spending a lot of time thinking about our reputation. But the truth is, most people are busy thinking about their own reputation, and it's not really that much to worry about. But yeah, it's hard when you're in the boat, and that's why you have to constantly check your realities against your perceptions. You're like, oh, did I make a bad impression, or whatever it happens to be. Really think about what the worst case scenario is in reality.
There's a nice comment by Angela in the chat if you want to read that.
Yeah, okay. Yes, Elaine, we'll be sharing the slides with you. Yep, they'll be on the cafe page. All right. Angela shares, it's difficult when you're over preparing and the group you work under prepares and then feeds your anxiety that you really want to do well, because then the truth will be revealed that you're not supposed to be there. When I got accepted to CGU, I thought this was a mistake. They're going to know. And then I got hired as a corporate director. I kept saying eventually they're going to find out, and then I would excel, and had such a hard time. I still can't believe I'm here. Yeah, and earning and wondering when the other shoe will drop. Yeah, you're wondering when the other shoe will drop. I mean, one thing I'm going to say, Angela, is that if you got admitted here, you don't have to keep worrying about proving your worth to be here anymore. Like everybody here wants you to succeed. No one's looking for reasons to drop that other shoe. It's common because you got to graduate school through perfectionism, probably, right? You worked your butt off in your undergraduate program. You probably had a lot of work experience. Maybe you had to get good GRE scores and all that. But you can take that weight off of your shoulders. You did the work, you're here, and it's really everyone else's job to make sure that you succeed now. You don't have to keep proving that you belong to be here. All right. So this is just some different theoretical perspectives on it. Where's the one I'm looking for? I like this one. It's part of two extremes, normal limits and extreme limits, right? So again, it's normal to want to withhold your weaknesses in certain social contexts. But again, it's really this cycle. When we start getting to the extreme of it, it can become worse. All right, I'm watching the time, so I just kind of want to get to the strategies because that's what you're mainly here for. We kind of talked about this a little bit, just why it's important to build those sustainable work habits, the consequences of it, burnout, poor achievement, guilt and shame about success, fears of acceptance, emotional exhaustion. Success does not mean happiness, anxiety due to fear to failure. It's a big deal in higher education, right? Between 27 and 75% of graduate students suffer from it based on these studies. Dropout rates can be anywhere to 50%. And it's a real shame in the university when people get so stressed out that they drop out, right? Because it's a loss of research talent. It's a loss to the community good that you could go on to do. And it's a loss of investment for yourself and everybody that's invested in you succeeding. Okay. And again, why it's not addressed in higher education, because again, it's like not considered a typical disorder that you would treat through mental health. So it may not be on the forefront, although I'm sure they would be happy to talk to you. I'm not a psychologist, so ask a psychologist, they would know more about it. But it's not something I see in any kind of like campus health promotion activities. When it comes to faculty and mentorship, I think what happens a lot of time is somebody will see maybe a student struggling with deadlines, and they'll be like, you need time management resources, right? Let's teach you time management. Or you need someone to nudge you along and check in and be like, hey, how are you doing with that deadline, right? Thinking that these things are going to help. They don't help, because the problem is not that the student does not know how to manage their time or meet deadlines. It's really this fear that they have to prove their worth through their work, right? That this is what we value in academia, is this hard work. And so I'm going to work so hard on the backstage so I can prove my worth on the front stage. But if you address that, then it solves itself, right? But most people aren't aware of what's happening. You're probably not aware of what's happening. Your faculty's not aware of what's happening. So you can't properly get helped in the way you need. And it's more of a self-help sort of thing. Once you're aware of it, then you can be more open in communicating it and help your supporters help you. Yeah. So the solution, we just have to have more conversations like this and help you to help yourself. And then as you become more authentic and share those weaknesses in conversation with other students, hopefully it will be more part of the culture. Do you think it's because we're a generation of millennials that come after Generation X that most of them had really good education and certifications and research? What do you mean, Sarah?
So the Generation X are those who were born in 1965 until the 80s, and they are our professors at the moment, and they are those people that are in sensitive positions, and those are the people that are pioneers. They had a time where education was very affordable, it was very available. They were pushed toward it. Do you think that we have this imposter syndrome because we are trying so much harder than our parents and our those who we look at to achieve something that is a little bit harder? Like millennials are those who were born until 1994. So I'm assuming that most of us in graduate school are around that age. Do you think it has to do with something along that lines? Because we're trying to achieve so much in a very hard situation, like economy, like even now people are calling for like hustling yourself rather than having an education, that it's not important. Do you think that has something to do with it? Or like maybe anyone has any thought about it? And maybe it's not because I'm talking about Generation X per se, but maybe even if you're Generation X, maybe you're comparing yourself to those who are a little bit older than yourself, that are pioneers, that had it easier.
I,
What do you think?
I don't think it's about anything being easy or not easy. I will say this. I think it's kind of like your environment and like where you're brought up and then what you're surrounded with. And I can tell you that I worked really hard to get out of a very specific environment that a lot of people didn't get out of. And that is probably the key to why I suffer sometimes from this imposter syndrome, where I feel like I'm not a part of. And it's because for many years of my life, I wasn't part of that. I was part of a different culture, part of a different type of lifestyle. And the fact that I was able to get out of that lifestyle and be successful at these types of things is a huge achievement. But sometimes I sit and think, who am I and how did I get here? And is this even real? Because a lot of my friends are not here today. They're gone. They passed, or they got, they were in gangs. They were, like these people didn't make it out of my lifestyle. They OD'd. Like things happened to them where they didn't make it out of that lifestyle. So I don't necessarily agree. I don't think that Gen X or any gen has it more easy or more difficult or anything like that. I think that it has a lot to do with like your surroundings and how you were brought up, and everyone's going to be a little different in that.
Yeah, Ruth.
Thanks, Jonathan. I want to say I agree. Well, let me start again. Was it, I think Sarah was the one that started speaking, and then was that Angela who spoke? But both those speakers have valid points. I mean, for the millennial piece, as in the last maybe 25 years or so, I think the society is doing a lot more in squished time, because maybe we have more tools, there's more technology, so there is that burden. But according to what Jonathan shared in the slides, this imposter syndrome has been around. If Einstein could have that quote, and Michelle Obama could have those feelings, just like the person who spoke before me, it's across generations, I think, and it does have to do with the industry, the environment. It's multifactorial, maybe. There's so many things that contribute to it. I would like to add that I feel like there might be more that can be done. To something like this brings focus to it. So thank you very much, Cafe, and Jonathan, and Sarah, and everybody that's put it together. There are some structural process and outcome pieces. For myself, I struggled with a psych class probably last year or so, and imposter syndrome was part of that. But what helped me was the outreach, a hand held out. And it was from that empirical outcome of falling behind, not performing as well, but then faculty reached out. They didn't know what the problem was, and they didn't offer solutions. They just that outreach helped to know that, oh, someone's noticing, someone sees me, and someone's concerned and wants to find a solution. I think that kind of mindset for me, we're talking about mindset, is a helpful tool to help us conquer or navigate, whichever term you choose.
Okay, so this brings a lot to the conversation. So we have the perspective of, does your background have a role in this, right? And to be honest, the research is inconclusive. So I'm trying to study this more because there's just not a lot of data on it, really. And it's previously been believed that it's more prevalent in people that come from families that have high expectations for success. You know, they're very much like mom and dad and grandpa are all physicians, and you must be a physician or a lawyer or something like that. And so you have that pressure to be accepted, or that it also is prevalent in people that come from backgrounds where you're not expected to succeed, and then you sort of join the ranks of people that are more successful. However, we haven't really found if that to be true or not, right? But I'm sure it does play some role. We just don't know where that falls. And then absolutely, like, social support is a big difference, Ruth. And because you pointed out that even though somebody may not know exactly what's going on, the fact that they've noticed something and they want to be involved is just good mentorship. And so that's the kind of mentor you want to be if you're working with students. You want to be someone that's involved, and you have high expectations for success, but you're also very involved, right? So that even if you don't know what's going on, you're starting that conversation. All right. So in terms of strategies, one strategy is impression management, because again, you're trying to say that you belong here, right? So if you come from a background where you're not expected to succeed, then you get in a prestigious private institution, a graduate school, and then you're like, okay, all these people that maybe had lots of resources or come from privileged backgrounds are here. I have to sort of show that I belong, right? And so you're really worried about your reputation, the impression that you're making, right? And so when it comes to making an impression, we have this backstage and front stage. So in life and within our discipline, you have a backstage in which you prepare to perform, and then you have a stage you perform on. But there's many stages that we perform, right? You have your interpersonal relationships, you know, your romantic relationships, your professional relationships, your teaching responsibilities, your research responsibilities, I'm sure you can think of many stages in which you perform on, right? So it's triggered by those performance-related tasks, and those performance-related tasks you can think of as, this is the front stage that I'm performing on. The backstage is where all the preparation or procrastination is happening, right? Through your own internal worries. And so when you think of this front stage and backstage, there's this iceberg effect. We all know, like, the iceberg sort of analogy. Pardon me. When we look at other people and we see the strengths, their academic mask, the polished selves that they show up as. And then we see ourselves and we're aware of our struggles as opposed to our strengths. So we're very aware of our own backstage and other people's front stage, but very unaware of other people's backstage and our front stage. The impression that we're actually making on people versus the impression we perceive that we're making, and the amount that everybody else really is struggling. We've had some folks share in this webinar today about how they feel about being a PhD student, and we all feel the same way. We just don't all talk about it. We're not all that transparent about it, right? So if we all talked to each other more about things we struggle with, we would probably find out that we have a lot more in common than we think. But where everybody's worried about making a good impression, so we all show up to the front stage as our most polished selves. And in qualitative interviews with graduate students, it's kind of been referred to as wearing the academic mask. If you're not being your full authentic self when you're on campus, you're usually, at least in graduate school and PhD studies, even as well, you're showing up as this scholarly persona of yourself, this perfect scholar, right? And so you see everybody else and they seem to be doing well and just gliding through. And you might ask yourself, well, what's wrong with you? You know, everyone else is having such an easy time, so something must be wrong with me. And there is something wrong with you. What's wrong with you is the fact that you think that there's something wrong with you. So just stop thinking something's wrong with you and nothing will be wrong with you, so to speak. Now, realizing that this backstage exists for everybody else, think about it like this: the people that you most admire, right? Consider that the most peaceful person you know argues with their spouse, that the best student you know struggles behind the scenes, and the most professional person you know makes embarrassing mistakes. We're all human in that way. That backstage is real for everybody. The beautiful thing about realizing the existence of this is you're worried about your reputation, but you don't need to be, because honestly, no one's thinking about you that much because everybody else has their own backstages and front stages to deal with. They're all thinking about things they have to do, their concerns, their impression, right? So all you really get from these people that you're so concerned about making a good impression with is this tiny sliver of attention, right? So the beauty of that is you don't have to do all that work behind the scenes to make a good impression. In fact, you should do the very littlest minimal amount of work as possible to make the best impression when you're in the front stage. And all you got to do well with to make a good impression is just this tiny bit of attention you got from someone. Whatever that little bit of face time is you have, just do go with that. What's the least you have to do? Do you have to do the whole literature review, or can you just send them a link to the article and discuss it when you meet? You know, do the least effort for the most benefit, because if you look at your faculty, they're busy people, right? They're running from one meeting to a next. They cannot keep up with their responsibilities if they had to be perfect all the time, right? So it's really a perfectionist thing you got to check. You have other stages to tend to. You can't put that much effort into one stage, right? So conserve your energy, do the littlest possible behind the scenes, make the best impression you can in the front stage, and then move on to your next performance. You have many places to show up to. I'm Maggie Hoggins. I'm resonating with this conversation. Thank you for sharing your experiences, everyone. I'm an older student, someone who worked with students for years, and then decided I wanted to finish my graduate work. I'm first generation student, and I did not have college educated people in my life. Until I went to college, I dropped out, failed out, first time attempted undergrad, and I've carried that failure with me for years. I appreciate Ruth's comments. In my experience, people in the system reaching out, noticing it's important. Yeah. Maggie, thank you, Maggie. Maggie Hawkins is a really great support. Maggie's one of the reasons I'm here. She worked as one of the recruiters for my program, and I talked to her on the phone many times, but before I came over, she answered like all my questions and concerns. And yeah, being an older student, being a first generation student, those are all things that we can sort of carry with us, right? But the thing to know is that that's self-imposed. No one's putting that on you except for you. So you can let it go. You can put that burden down. And then past failures haunt you, right? I mean, none of us, nobody that is successful wins all the time, right? They get there over constant persistence and many failures. Failure is the first step in learning. So, if people want to judge, whatever, right? But like Sarah said, it's none of your business. Just keep moving forward. Don't worry about it. I mean, chances are whoever those people you knew in that undergraduate program, you don't even talk to them anymore. Who cares what they think? Totally relate, Maggie. Supportive. Stick together. Thanks, Jonathan. Okay, great. All right, yeah. So, an example is I used to spend a lot of time when I was asked for like articles and stuff. I used to put together these lit reviews and send it to a mentor. And then one day when I would get an email, hey, what studies are on this thing? I would just send them the link to the article. And so that email, being responsive on email, is another one of those stages we have to perform on, right? And I was like, I wonder if I just send them the link to the article, if they would be just as happy. And sure enough, they were. They went and looked at the articles themselves. I didn't have to do that extra work, right? So shoot for the low-hanging fruit. Yeah, being authentic, we can change the culture, talk about it more. Okay, so let's set some targets, right? Mindsets and work habits. So if I was talking to a different group of people, the message would be different. So I want to preface this by saying that this is just the message you need to hear because you're perfectionists, okay? So, since you're a perfectionist, try to be more lazy, right? because look, if you try to be more lazy, you're probably going to fall somewhere in a more healthy balance, right? So look for those shortcuts I was talking about. Bring other people in. Don't think you have to do everything yourself. One of the dangerous things that can happen with imposter syndrome is that you don't deal with these things. You show up in a management position and then you don't delegate to anybody. You try to keep tight control over everything so everything can be perfect and go well. And then you burn out and it's a disaster and everyone's mad at you, right? So delegate where you can in a win-win way, right? Don't be a burden to people. So try to be more lazy, do the least amount of effort. We talked about that. If you're worried about the impression you're making on other people, this is a controversial point. And I want to say that everybody here wants you to succeed and we all need each other. Look, graduate students are needed. The whole system runs on you. It depends on you. And we need our supportive mentors and our faculty, right? But if it helps you in any way, try to be more entitled, okay? It's easy for you to think that these other people have power over you and you have to do whatever they want and keep them happy so that they'll get you through. But the fact of the matter is that, look, you're here paying an enormous amount of time, effort, and money to invest in your career and your educational goals. So if it helps you to sort of flip the script, you're not going to walk around and be an entitled jerk that's difficult to work with. You're probably going to fall in the middle somewhere where you should be, right? So I'm not telling you to be an entitled jerk. I'm just saying, don't be afraid to advocate for your needs. If you have a need express it to the people that are there to support you, right? And if you're really fearful of doing that, then, you know, boss up a little bit if that's what you need to do. So if you're worried about reputation, try to care less, right? Be more careless. So in other words, like, who cares what peers think, right? There's always going to be someone saying, oh, you have to be this perfect with your methods or this or that. It's like, look, try to just be like, look, I need to get this quick study done so I can graduate and move on, right? So I don't want to keep beating this over your head, but it's like, I worry that people are going to be like, what, I'm telling people to be lazy, what I'm telling people to be controversial, right? Again, I'm being extreme on purpose. I'm giving you the message that you need to hear because you're on one end of the extreme, right? Lots of people are getting what they need and graduating and moving on because they're not afraid to advocate for themselves, right? So I'm trying to give you some empowering messages here so that you will get out of your head and just keep it simple, get what you need, and keep things moving forward. Right? So try to care a little bit less about everything being perfect. Look, you're here for a very small amount of time, right? You have a whole research career ahead of you. Okay. So don't worry about being perfect. Perfectionism is the enemy of progress. Good enough is great, right? Just be good enough. And, you know, probably try to be less than good enough because you're a perfectionist, right? So, you know, aim low. All right. Yes, absolutely. Get things done. Move forward, Angela says. All right. And this is very important. The catastrophizing, right? So a lot of this stress isn't real stress, it's perceived stress. So what can you do about that? Well, when you start thinking like, if I don't perform in this certain way, this certain thing is going to happen, I'm going to lose all my opportunities, whatever. Now, networking, being considered useful, participatory, it's a real thing. It's important. You can't just like say no to everything, but you can't say yes to everything either. You have to say yes to win-win scenarios where you're getting what you need and they're getting what they need, right? But as far as the catastrophizing goes, check it against reality, right? What's the worst? Stop and when you start stressing out over your own thoughts, stop and ask yourself, what's the worst thing that could happen really, right? If I do a bad job at the webinar today, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? We're all going to say you didn't like it. I'm going to learn from it. I'll do better next time. That's probably the worst thing that would happen, right? I mean, you spend an hour of your lunch break, right? It's not that much of a catastrophe. But like, you know, as opposed to like, everyone's going to hate me, I'm going to lose my job, all of this stuff, right? So check it against the worst thing that could realistically happen. And what are the objective facts, right? So the objective facts are like, look, for those of you that are worried about fitting in or, you know, maybe not like getting kicked out of school, it's probably not going to happen. If you got admitted here, people want you to finish. It's better for the school, for their metrics to see you graduate, right? Again, you're also paying tuition. So, I mean, nobody's really like looking to get rid of you, you know? So don't, you know, don't not do anything. But I think that trying to be more lazy isn't going to stop you from being productive. I think if people get stuck in paralysis, it's because of these other things. It's because being unaware of the expectations, the invisible curriculum, and also getting stuck in rumination and overthinking and being perfectionist about things. So honestly, if you're being more lazy and you're being more realistic about your catastrophizing in reality, I think you'll be more productive, honestly. And then ask yourself, like, what's most likely to happen really? Like, what's the worst thing that could happen, right? And so I think, like Sarah was saying, yeah, you're not as expendable as you might think. I mean, you're a very high level of talent, you know, for sure, you're a high level of talent. And the university system sort of runs off of that, right? You have high level graduate talent. They admitted you for a reason. You work as a research assistant or a teaching assistant or whatever it is you do. You help your faculty on their research projects. They mentor you on yours. You become a faculty member. The cycle sort of continues, right? If we had to pay full price for everybody to be that talent, we probably couldn't afford to do the research that we do. So you're needed. The system runs off of you, basically. So don't think that you're expendable. Okay, listen. We're running out of we're pretty much out of time. So can you do me a favor? Can you do like this post-webinar survey so I can see how effective this was? I'll put the link in the chat. And then I'm here for you to continue the discussion as well. Thanks, Maggie.